Chapter 3 focuses in on communication, which is really what public relations is all about. And it's certainly, if you look at what are some of the skill sets that public relations people have, what do they bring to the table in an organization that sets them apart from others who sit at the executive roundtable, it all comes down to communication. Public relations people are the communication professionals for an organization. They're the ones who understand what the appropriate message is, what is the right medium to use to get that message to the right audience person to have a certain impact on them. That's really what it all comes down to. Is public relations is about effective communication, and the idea of communication, of course, will kind of circulate throughout the entire book. But for chapter 3, we really just kind of focusing in on some of the basics. So the book talks about what are really some of the goals of communication as it pertains to public relations. Well, your goal with communicating, one, it can be to inform someone, which is obviously a pretty significant one. It can be to persuade someone, or it can be to motivate someone, or it can be to build mutual understanding. And there is some overlap between those 4 different areas, but usually when you're sitting down to write a press release, produce a brochure, send out a tweet, the effect you're hoping to have from that particular communication is one of those four things. The book talks a little bit about traditional theories of communication. I'm not going to dwell too much on that. I like to kind of get away from theory and into the more practical aspects of communication. It's good to know, though, so take a look over, both the traditional theories and the contemporary theories. Certainly public relations practices communication practices have been built around some of those theories. The contemporary theories, that is communication theories of today, what's interesting is they are in a state of evolution of sorts, and very rapid evolution, because of the significant, huge impact social media communications has. The theories are having to adapt some to kind of meet the goals of social media theories. Although, really, some of the basic things of the very first examples of communication theory come into effect in social media too. Again, going back to those 4 goals. Really doesn't matter what the medium is or the manner in which you're communicating. There's some really basic things you're trying to achieve. What social media has done is it's caused us to have to react quicker in the world of communication more than anything. And also the theories are all also revolve around feedback. We'll talk about feedback here towards the end, and feedback has to do what happens when the person on the other end receives that communication. What did they do, and did they do what we wanted them to do? Book goes on to talk about words. Obviously, words are an important part of any of communication. It's what communication is all about, whether it be the spoken or the written word. And I think, we get going to this idea of content and of the words themselves. I think what's happening in the world of social media, where there's an emphasis on bells and whistles as far as websites, and trying to keep messages contained within 140 characters for a tweet. Sometimes I think people within public relations really overlook the value of good, solid content, and really spending time and focusing in on making sure that the right words are used. This is why they make red pens and editors, so that people spend time, wordsmithing content and making sure we are saying the exact thing that we want to. Understanding, of course, that audiences do respond differently to different words. And like how the book talks about not just discriminatory language that you run the risk of offending people, but there are some words that if you throw them out there, they can cite debates just by the words themselves. Conservative, liberal, environmental activist, corporate profits. There's words like that can actually cause people to have their hair raised. And it's just a simple word, but it all comes to semantics. What's the meaning of the word, and what does it mean to the person who is receiving the word? So we use words to build messages, and the book talks about the three different ideas, kind of theories behind what is a message. The most popular one is the message is about the content. What are you saying within the message, the words that are used? That right there comprises the message. Pretty basic idea. Another popular one that was came about from Marshall McLuhan in the 1960s was that the medium is the message, that the manner in which the message is pushed out, whether it be through a newspaper or on a blog or on television, that's a primary influencer there. And then the third one is that the message is the person. Who is the person, the talking head, that is delivering the content, and how does that impact what the person feels about what's being said? I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of all three, and you have to take those things into consideration when crafting messages, not just the content, but the manner in which it's going to be delivered, and also who is the person delivering it. Again, these are the type of things that public relations people need to be aware of and factor into communication strategies. Communicating a message is it's futile unless it helps achieve the desired goal of the communicator. It all depends on what happens when that message gets to the person you're trying to get it to. And the problem is that the receiver of a message has personal biases that we can't really control for the most part. We all have biases, whether we like to admit it or not. And the book talks about, well, what are the types of biases that people have that can affect the way they interpret a message. It talks about stereotypes, talks about symbols, talks about semantics, again, getting back to the idea of the words themselves. It's impacted by peer groups and also by media. And the book gives a short description of how those different areas can impact someone's biases. Again, these are the things we all have to keep in mind within public relations. Just the myriad of scenarios out there, and sometimes really what it seems kind of overwhelming at first when you think, boy, you factor in all this. Solid communication is almost impossible sometimes. Well, it's not. It's not impossible, and sometimes it really relies on a gut check that you just know, okay, this is the right thing to say, this is the right way to say it, this is the right method for delivering it, and sometimes it comes down to just having a good idea that, no, this is really the best way to do. Again, keeping in mind these other different areas. For feedback, when you are getting a message to someone, what happens when that person receives the message is there'll be four different things. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about influencing public opinion, which, excuse me, is all about the idea of sending a message out in a manner that it's going to cause someone to react in a desired way. So when you send a message out, the feedback can be, or the response can be, one is that it'll change their attitude. Well, the book talks about this is very, very difficult to achieve. Let's use yourself for an example. We're going into a political year here in Alaska for governor. You might have already made your mind up of who you are going to elect, who you're going to vote for governor. For me to be able to change your mind, to cause you to come over to the other side, so to speak, that's a very difficult thing to do. We'll talk more about that in the public opinion chapter, of how difficult it is to convince someone who's already made up their mind on something to go the other way. It requires some pretty solid persuasive skills. The other one is it can crystallize an attitude. The message that you receive can cause you to kind of reassure what you already know. You were kind of leaning towards a direction of purchasing a particular product or voting for a certain person, and what was within the message kind of reinforced, yes, this is the right thing to do. It can create a wedge of doubt. That's a lot more common than completely changing an attitude. It can make you think differently about something or someone. And then finally, it can just simply do nothing. You could receive the message and say, this doesn't change my mind, this really doesn't do anything. And there are people out there who are affected at all. Like I said, sometimes the best laid plans within a communication strategy go to waste. Read through the book has the last word on page 57. I like the way it kind of summarizes some of the challenges of communication, and gives some advice for really what it takes to make it as effective as you can, given the different scenarios out there. So when you're ready, go ahead and take the next quiz after you watch, of course, the lecture on chapter 4, which we'll see you for that one. Thanks.